The knock came soft at first, almost swallowed by the wind. Then again, louder this time. Ronan Blake froze where he stood. The old wooden cabin creaked around him. The storm outside howled like something alive, restless, angry. He wasn't expecting anyone. No one ever came out here. Not anymore. He took a slow breath, his fingers tightening around the bottle in his hand, before setting it down with a dull thud. Another knock. This one weaker, trembling. Ronan frowned. Something about it felt wrong. Not urgent. Not aggressive. Just desperate. He moved toward the door, each step heavy, reluctant, like his body already knew opening it would change something. He didn't like change. Not after everything. The handle felt cold in his palm. For a second, he hesitated. He could ignore it. Pretend no one was there. Walk away like he always did. It would be easier. It always was. But the knock didn't come again. And somehow, that silence felt worse. Ronan pulled the door open. The wind rushed in immediately, sharp and biting, carrying flakes of snow that stung his face. And there, standing on the edge of his porch, was a little boy, no older than 8. Thin, shaking, his small jacket barely enough against the cold. Snow clung to his hair, his lashes, his tiny shoulders. His lips were pale, almost blue, but it wasn't the cold that made Ronan's chest tighten. It was the way the boy looked up at him. Not with fear, not even with hope, just quiet exhaustion, like he had already run out of both. The boy swallowed hard. His voice came out small, cracked, barely louder than the wind. My mommy just died. A pause, a breath that didn't quite steady. Then, can I stay with you, please? The words landed heavy. Too heavy for someone so small. Ronan didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. Because something about that sentence, something about the way it was said, hit deeper than it should have. Like a memory he had buried, clawing its way back to the surface. He clenched his jaw. No, he wasn't doing this. Not again. Not ever. I don't do charity, Ronan muttered, his voice rough, detached. The boy didn't flinch. Didn't argue. Didn't beg. He just nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. Like he had already heard it before. Oh, okay. That was all he said. And then, he turned. Just like that. Small footsteps crunching into the snow, unsteady, slow but determined. Ronan watched him go. Watched the way his tiny frame struggled against the wind. Watched how he wrapped his arms around himself, trying to hold on to whatever warmth he had left. And still, he kept walking. Didn't look back. Didn't ask again. Didn't cry. That's what got to him. Not the words. Not the situation. But that. The silence. The acceptance. The way the boy had already learned that sometimes people don't help. Ronan exhaled sharply, dragging a hand over his face. Not my problem, he muttered under his breath. He stepped back. Started to close the door. Halfway through, he stopped. His grip tightened. His eyes flicked back toward the storm. The boy was already further now, barely visible through the falling snow. And something twisted in Ronan's chest. Hard, uncomfortable, familiar. A memory flashed. Dark, quick, unwanted. A different night. A different storm. A voice small, scared. Please don't leave me. Ronan shut his eyes. Damn it. He pushed the door open again. The cold hit him instantly, but he didn't hesitate this time. Hey, he called out, his voice cutting through the wind. The boy stopped. Slowly, he turned around. Ronan walked toward him, boots crunching against the snow, his expression unreadable, conflicted. When he got close, he crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to the boy's level. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy hesitated. Then quietly, "Eli." Ronan nodded once, his jaw still tight. "You got anywhere else to go, Eli?" A small shake of the head. "No, of course not." Ronan looked away for a second, cursing under his breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. He didn't take people in. Didn't fix problems. Didn't care. That's how he survived. That's how he stayed untouched. But right now, standing in front of this kid, none of that seemed to matter. Ronan let out a long breath, then jerked his head toward the cabin. "Come on," he said gruffly, "before you freeze out here." Eli didn't move at first, like he wasn't sure he heard right. "Really?" he whispered. Ronan frowned. "Kid, I ain't saying it twice." That did it. Eli hurried forward, small steps quickening, relief flickering across his face for the first time. Ronan turned, walking back toward the cabin without waiting. But something had already shifted. Something small. Something dangerous. Because as the door shut behind them, and the storm raged on outside, Ronan Blake realized one thing. He hadn't just let the boy in. He had just opened a door he had spent years trying to keep locked. And deep down, he knew this wasn't going to be simple. Not even close. The door shut behind them, and the storm faded into a distant roar. Inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. Eli stood near the entrance, unsure, small hands hanging at his sides, eyes scanning the dim room like he wasn't sure what he was allowed to touch or even feel. Ronan walked past him without a word. He grabbed an old towel, tossed it over. "Dry yourself," he said. Eli caught it clumsily, nodding. "Thank you." His voice was soft, careful. Ronan didn't respond. He moved toward a cabinet, pulled out a worn hoodie, one that clearly didn't belong to a child, but it was warm. He dropped it beside Eli. "Put that on." Another nod. Another quiet "thank you." The words echoed slightly in the cabin. Unfamiliar. Uncomfortable. Ronan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching without really looking. The kid was slow. Careful. Like every movement had to be approved first. That bothered him more than it should. "You always this quiet?" Ronan asked. Eli paused, halfway through pulling the hoodie over his head. "I don't want to be a problem." The answer came quick. Too quick. Like it had been practiced. Ronan's jaw tightened. A kid that small shouldn't sound like that. Shouldn't think like that. "Kid," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck, "you already knocked on a stranger's door in the middle of nowhere. That ship sailed." Eli gave a small, uncertain smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Ronan looked away. Something about that smile, it sat wrong. He pushed himself off the counter, walking toward the small stove. "You eaten a pause. Then, no, of course not." Ronan let out a quiet breath. He grabbed a pot, poured in water, movements rough but practiced. "I'm not a babysitter," he said after a moment. "I'm not good with this." Eli didn't speak. Didn't interrupt. Just listened. That somehow made it worse. Ronan glanced back at him. "Don't expect much, all right." Eli nodded. "I don't." There it was again. That acceptance, like disappointment, was already built into him. Ronan turned back to the stove, staring at the water as it began to heat. His reflection shimmered faintly. Older than he remembered. Colder, too. He used to be different. Before the club. Before the roads that never ended. Before the night everything went wrong. He shook his head slightly, like trying to push the memory away. "Not now. Not ever." "Sit," he said, pointing to a chair. Eli obeyed immediately, climbing onto it quietly, feet not even touching the ground. The silence stretched between them, only broken by the soft crackle of the stove. Then, do you live alone? Eli asked. Ronan stilled. A simple question, but it landed heavier than expected. Yeah, a bit. Why? Eli hesitated. It feels lonely. Ronan let out a dry chuckle. Good. Eli blinked. Ronan glanced over his shoulder. Lonely means quiet. Quiet means no problems. Eli looked down at his hands. It also means no one talks to you. Ronan didn't answer. Because that part was true. The water began to boil. He poured in some cheap noodles, stirring without much care. You got family? He asked. Eli's shoulders tensed slightly. No. Ronan frowned. No want. A small shake of the head. It was just me and my mom. Silence followed. Thicker this time. Ronan exhaled slowly. Sorry, he muttered. The word sounded foreign coming from him. Eli looked up, surprised. It's okay, he said softly. It's not your fault. Ronan huffed. Yeah, doesn't make it less messed up. He poured the noodles into a bowl, set it on the table in front of Eli. Eat. Eli stared at it for a second, like he couldn't believe it was real. Then slowly, he picked up the fork. The first bite was small. Careful. Then another. Faster this time. Ronan watched quietly. The way the kid ate, like he wasn't sure when the next meal would come. It stirred something. Something old. Something buried. You don't gotta rush, Ronan said. Eli paused. I'm just really hungry. Yeah, I can see that. A faint hint of something, almost like softness, slipped into Ronan's voice. It surprised even him. He cleared his throat, stepping back. I'll figure something out in the morning, he added. Maybe call someone, get you somewhere proper. Eli's grip on the fork tightened. You don't want me to stay. Not a question. Just a statement. Ronan hesitated. That familiar pressure returned, building in his chest. I didn't say that. But you meant it. Ronan exhaled sharply. Kid, this ain't a place for you. Eli nodded slowly. I know. That word again. Acceptance. Like rejection was normal. Like it didn't hurt anymore. Ronan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Just eat, he muttered. Eli did. Quietly, and for a while neither of them spoke. But something had already shifted. Small, unspoken, dangerous. Because as Ronan watched that boy sit there, trying not to take up space, trying not to be a burden, he felt something crack. Just a little. A part of him he thought was gone. And deep down, he knew. This wasn't just about one night anymore. Morning came slowly. Like the storm itself was reluctant to leave. A pale light slipped through the cracked window, stretching across the wooden floor, touching everything softly, carefully, like it didn't want to disturb the quiet. Ronan was already awake. He hadn't slept much. He rarely did. But last night it was worse. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw that boy standing in the snow again, small, shaking, alone. And it didn't sit right. Not with him. Not anymore. He sat at the table, a mug in his hand, untouched, staring at nothing. Then, a soft sound. Movement. Ronan looked up. Eli stood near the doorway, wrapped in that oversized hoodie, sleeves swallowing his hands, hair still messy from sleep. He looked different. Still fragile, still quiet. But warmer. Safer. Morning, Eli said softly. Ronan nodded once. Yeah. A pause. Eli shifted slightly. Thank you for letting me stay. Ronan looked away. Don't make it a big thing, he muttered. But Eli didn't push. He just nodded, like he understood, like he always did. That bothered Ronan again. Too much understanding for someone so young. Come sit, Ronan said after a moment. Eli walked over slow, careful, taking the same chair from last night. Ronan slid a piece of bread toward him. It wasn't much, but it was something. Eli accepted it with both hands. Thank you. There it was again. Ronan sighed quietly. You say that a lot. Eli blinked. My mom said you should always say thank you, even for small things. The words hit differently this time. Ronan leaned back slightly. She sounds like she knew what she was doing. Eli's fingers tightened around the bread. She did. A pause. Then, she used to say people forget how to be kind, so when someone is, you should remember it. Ronan didn't answer. Because something about that. It landed deeper than expected. Too close to something he had lost. He cleared his throat. What happened, he asked. Eli looked up. My mom. Ronan nodded. Eli's gaze dropped. She got sick. Simple words. But heavy. Wasn't supposed to be that bad, Eli continued quietly. They said she would get better. A small breath. She didn't. Silence filled the room. Thick. Still. Ronan rubbed his jaw. You were there. Eli nodded. I held her hand. His voice didn't shake, but his fingers did. She told me not to be scared. A pause. Then softer. She said I'd find someone who would help me. Ronan's chest tightened. Something about that sentence. It didn't feel random. She said that, he asked. Eli nodded again. She said, go to the man who doesn't believe he's good anymore. He'll need you too. Ronan froze. The words hit like a punch. Sharp. Unexpected. His grip on the mug tightened slightly. What does that mean? He asked, voice lower now. Eli shrugged lightly. I don't know. But he did. Not fully. But enough. Ronan could see it in his eyes. A flicker of something. Recognition. Memory. Something forming. Why here? Ronan pressed. Why this place? Eli hesitated. Then slowly, he reached into the pocket of the hoodie. He pulled something out. Small. Worn. A photograph. He placed it gently on the table. Ronan stared at it. Didn't move at first. Didn't breathe. Then slowly, he reached for it. His fingers brushed against the edge. And everything inside him shifted. It was old. Faded. But clear enough. A woman. Smiling. Standing beside a younger man. A man Ronan knew. Because it was him. Years ago. Before everything. Before the club. Before the anger. Before the loss. His chest tightened. Where did you get this? He asked, voice rough now. Eli looked at him. It's my mom. The words landed heavy. Too heavy. Ronan's eyes flicked back to the photo. Then to Eli. Then back again. No, he said under his breath. But the resemblance. The timing. The message. It all started to connect. Slowly. Dangerously. What's her name? Ronan asked. Eli swallowed. Myrath. Ronan's breath caught. Myrath. He hadn't heard that name in years. Not since the day he walked away. Not since he chose the road over everything else. Including her. His hand trembled slightly. She never told me about you, Eli added quietly. A pause. Then softer. But she kept this picture. Ronan closed his eyes for a second. Just a second. But it was enough. Because everything he had buried, everything he had run from, was standing right in front of him now. Small, quiet, looking at him with those same eyes. And suddenly, nothing felt distant anymore. Nothing felt buried. Because the truth was right there, and it wasn't going away. Ronan opened his eyes again. Slowly. "Kid," he said, voice barely steady. Eli looked up. "Yeah." Ronan stared at him. Really stared this time. Not as a stranger. Not as a burden. But as something else entirely. Something real. Something that changed everything. "I think," Ronan started, then stopped. The words didn't come easily. They never did. But this time, he couldn't walk away. "I think we need to talk." And for the first time, Eli didn't look uncertain. He just nodded, like he had been waiting for this moment all along. Because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't just a coincidence. And whatever came next was going to change both of them. Days turned into weeks, and somehow Eli never left. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. Just a few calls, a few arrangements, someone to take him in. But every time Ronan picked up the phone, he put it back down. Something always stopped him. Maybe it was the silence that no longer felt empty. Maybe it was the small voice that now filled the cabin in the mornings. Or maybe it was guilt. The kind that didn't fade. The kind that waited. Eli settled in quietly. He didn't ask for much. Didn't complain. Didn't take up space. But slowly, without forcing anything, he became part of the rhythm. He'd sit near the window in the mornings, watching the world wake up. He'd ask small questions. Careful ones. "Why do you ride your bike so far? What do you see out there?" Ronan never gave full answers. But he didn't ignore him either. "Roads quieter," he'd say. "Less people." Eli would nod, like that made sense. Sometimes he'd smile. And those small smiles, they started to matter. More than Ronan expected. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Eli spoke again. "My mom used to say, running doesn't fix things." Ronan stiffened slightly. "Yeah," he muttered. Eli nodded. "She said, it just delays the moment you have to face them." Silence followed. Long. Heavy. Ronan looked away. "Your mom talked a lot," he said. Eli smiled faintly. "Only when it mattered." That line stayed. It lingered. Because Ronan knew. He had spent years doing the opposite. Avoiding what mattered. Ignoring what hurt. Pretending nothing was broken. But something was changing now. Slowly. Without permission. And he didn't know what to do with it. Seasons shifted. Snow melted. The roads cleared. Time moved, whether he was ready or not. Eli grew stronger. Healthier. His voice carried more life now. More certainty. But he never stopped being gentle. Never stopped being careful. That part stayed. One afternoon, Ronan found him outside, sitting on the steps. Staring at the old motorcycle. "You ride fast," Eli said. Ronan leaned against the doorway. "Sometimes." "Why?" Ronan shrugged. "Feels like nothing can catch you." Eli looked down. But something always does. Ronan didn't respond. Because that was the truth. And it had finally caught up. Years of it. Waiting. Then one day, everything shifted again. A black SUV pulled up near the cabin. Unfamiliar. Out of place. Ronan stepped outside, instantly alert. Eli stood behind him, quiet, watching. A man stepped out of the vehicle. Suit. Clean. Professional. Too clean for this place. "Ronan Blake?" the man asked. Ronan didn't answer right away. "Who's asking?" The man glanced at Eli. Then back at Ronan. "I'm here about the boy." Everything went still. Ronan's jaw tightened. "What about him?" The man stepped closer. "His mother left legal instructions." A pause. He has family. Eli shifted behind Ronan. Small. Tense. Where? Ronan asked. In the city, the man replied. They've been looking for him. Ronan felt something twist inside. Sharp. Uncomfortable. And now you found him. Yes. The word came too easily. Too final. Ronan glanced back at Eli. The boy wasn't crying. Wasn't panicking. But his hands, they were clenched. Tight. Do I have to go? Eli asked softly. The question cut deeper than anything else. Ronan looked at him. Really looked. And for a second, he didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, he didn't want him to go. Not anymore. Not after everything that had changed. But wanting something didn't mean you could keep it. That's where you belong, Ronan said slowly. The words felt wrong. Even as he said them. Eli nodded. Okay. That word again. Always okay. Even when it was. The man stepped forward. We'll leave in an hour. Ronan didn't respond. He just stood there. Still. Quiet. Watching something slip away again. Just like before. And this time, it hurt more. Because now, he understood what he was losing. Like an hour later, the bag was packed. Small. Simple. Eli stood near the door. Same place he had been that first night. But everything was different now. Thank you for everything, Eli said. His voice was steady. But his eyes, they said more. Ronan swallowed hard. You did good, kid. Eli gave a small smile. You too. That caught him off guard. Ronan let out a quiet breath. You'll be all right. Eli nodded. I know. Because someone had shown him how. And as the door opened, as Eli stepped out, as the car waited, Ronan stood there, feeling that same silence return. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Not after everything. And somewhere in that quiet, a decision was already forming. One that would change everything. Again, the cabin felt wrong without him. Too quiet. Too still. Ronan stood in the middle of the room, staring at the empty chair Eli used every morning. A few crumbs still sat on the table. Small. Unimportant. But they hit harder than anything else. He exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. This is better, he muttered. Back to normal. But it didn't feel normal. Not anymore. Because normal used to mean silence. Now silence felt like something missing. Days passed. Then weeks. Ronan tried to go back to his old routine. Riding long roads. Avoiding people. Keeping his distance. But it didn't work. Everywhere he went, something reminded him. A small jacket in a store window. A kid laughing across the street. A quiet voice in his head. Do I have to go? He stopped the bike suddenly one afternoon. Right in the middle of the road. His grip tightened on the handles. Damn it. He knew what this was. He had felt it once before. Years ago. When he walked away from Myra. When he told himself it didn't matter. That he didn't need anyone. That he was better off alone. He had been wrong then. And now, he was about to make the same mistake again. Ronan turned the bike around. This time he didn't hesitate. The city felt loud. Overwhelming. Different from the quiet he was used to. But he didn't stop. Didn't slow down. He followed the address the man had left. A large house. Clean. Perfect. Nothing like the cabin. Ronan stepped up to the door, his heart heavier than it had been in years. He knocked. Firm. Certain. Moments later, the door opened. The same man stood there. Surprised. "You're back." Ronan didn't waste time. "Where is he?" The man studied him for a second, then stepped aside. "Upstairs." Ronan moved immediately. Each step felt louder than it should. His chest tight, his breath uneven. Until he saw him. Eli sat on the edge of a bed. Clean clothes. Neat room. Everything he was supposed to have. But his shoulders, they were slumped. Heavy, like something didn't fit. He looked up and froze. "Ronan." His voice carried something fragile, something hopeful, something afraid to break. Ronan stepped closer. "Hey, kid." Silence filled the room. Then Eli stood quickly. "You came back." Not a question, a realization. Ronan nodded once. "Yeah." A pause. Then the truth. "I shouldn't have let you go like that." Eli's eyes widened slightly. Ronan continued, slower now. "I've spent years running from things that mattered." A breath. "I'm done running." Eli didn't speak. Didn't interrupt. He just listened. Just like always. Ronan crouched slightly, bringing himself to eye level again. "Just like the first night." "I don't know how to be what you need," he admitted. "I mess things up." A small pause. "But I want to try." Eli's lip trembled slightly. "You mean stay?" Ronan nodded. "If you want that." That part mattered. Because this time, it wasn't about control. It was about choice. Eli didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, wrapping his arms around Ronan tightly. And for the first time, Ronan didn't freeze, didn't pull away. He hugged him back, slowly, carefully, like he was learning something new. Because he was. And in that moment, everything shifted. Not perfectly, not magically, but honestly, two broken pieces. Choosing to stop running. Choosing to stay. Months later, the cabin felt different. Warmer, lighter. Eli's laughter filled the space now. Not quiet, not careful, real. Ronan still had his rough edges, still had his past, but he wasn't alone with it anymore. And neither was Eli. One evening, as the sun set beyond the trees, Eli looked up and said softly, "My mom was right." Ronan glanced down. "About what?" Eli smiled. "About you." Ronan didn't respond right away. He just looked out at the horizon, then nodded slightly. "Yeah." A pause, then softer. She was. And for the first time in a long time. That truth didn't hurt. It healed. If this story touched you, take a second and think about it. Sometimes the people who say they don't need anyone are the ones who need someone the most. And sometimes all it takes is one small moment to change everything. So if you felt something while listening, go ahead, like the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Share it with someone who might need it today. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Ronan's place?